Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 113. Lucky 113. I'm
Whoop
Tristan
whoop.
Jutra.
I'm Will Silver.
And I'm Gray Williams. But I'm
And
not
I'm
really.
Tasha Custody.
Unfortunately, Tasia could not be here yet again this evening. Whoopsie
Dope.
doopsie. Hopefully next week. And Gray should be joining us any minute now. He's rushing to Momentous HQ2 to be able to jump aboard and before too long, hopefully. But Will, you and I will we'll get this party started.
Yeah.
And we'll remind people while we're killing time to find out more about Momentous, momentous.tv
It's not
/ links.
it's not called killing time, it's called vamping.
Well, we do this part anyway. I mean,
Yeah,
just to, as people for the live stream, as people are hopping aboard if they do. Like momentous.tv / links, and you can learn about the team at momentous.tv / team. And of course, you can get the audio version, the podcast form of this live stream at momentous.tv / podcast. So, Will, let's jump right into it, shall we?
Let's do this.
We've got some fascinating stories this week, and we're going to start with it's kind of like an extended follow-up sort of story, for lack of a better word here. Last year, we talked about the Disney's Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser. So if you could remind us about what that is exactly, and what are the latest exciting developments with that?
So basically, me explaining it is going to be part of the problem. So let me just explain it, and then I'll explain the problems. So it's commonly known as the Star Wars Hotel. Basically, it was a hotel that was pretending to be a sort of space cruise ship. Think of the Fifth Element, that ship in the Fifth Element. And basically, you would go on as an individual or as a family, and you would stay in a room that was quite small with a TV screen that looked out into space. And the whole idea is that it was kind of like role playing. It was kind of like a mixture between an escape room and dinner theater and a murder mystery. There's a bunch of new characters. There's a couple old favorites like Chewie and Rey. And for that privilege, I believe it was $5,000 a person for 2 nights, or $6,000 for 2 people for 2 nights. And recently it's closed. They are announcing that it's shutting down. It's going until the fall, and then they are going to shut it down. And it was a bit of a crazy experiment. I think everyone acknowledges that. I think there was a couple problems, and obviously everyone's playing armchair general, Monday morning quarterback, all that kind of stuff. The price was prohibitive for most people. Also, I think, my wife and I have discussed this. We're huge Star Wars fans. We're huge Disney fans. But, we don't want to be part of the action. We don't want to, help the resistance. We want to watch a show. We don't necessarily want to be a player in the show. So for us, it wouldn't be worth the money. But really, when you look at what they created, I mean, there's millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in this hotel. And, they had people basically doing live theater, about 10 or 12 people performing, some of them in masks, some of them as giant Wookiees. I think the people who thought it should be cheaper, one of the problems is it was just expensive to run. Like, it was just an expensive show. So really, one of the fundamental problems a few pundits and Monday morning quarterbacks have said is that basically this wasn't really ever intended for everyone. But the problem is Star Wars, people feel that it belongs to them. And I agree with that, is that you feel that Star Wars belongs to you if you're a Star Wars fan. So I think there was sort of fundamental, disjointedness there, is that it was an experience that was too expensive and was meant for people with a lot of money, um, or who make bad decisions. And really people wanted it to be for them. So it's very unfortunate. These people were very talented, the performers and everyone involved. So I feel very sorry for them. And there's lots of YouTube videos of people's experiences going through. I've watched many of them, and it's really worth taking a watch of some of these. Just Google Galactic Starcruiser YouTube, or go on YouTube and Google Galactic Starcruiser. So yeah, so that's unfortunate.
So with a price of roughly $4,800 US for 2 adults, or pushing $6,000 for 3 adults and 1 kid, Will, were you namely, do you think you would, if there were any availability, do you think you would bite the bullet and try and get in there before it closes down at the end of September?
Well, they shut it down. So they've shut down bookings.
Okay.
So they might open them up again, but they shut them down just because they thought people were going to overwhelm the system. I don't think it's really for me, to be quite honest with you. I think I said this initially. I mean, I loved that they were doing it and I wanted to succeed. There's a lot of schadenfreude on the internet. If you Google some of this up, especially on Instagram or Twitter, you'll find people taking glee in, and I think that's really shameful. I think there's a lot of people who took a risk on something that was interactive and that a lot of people were very passionate about. And just because it was too much money for some people, and I'm not saying I had the money either. I'm just saying that just because you wanted to go, but maybe you couldn't afford it, doesn't mean you should take glee in other people losing their jobs. That's just my personal hot take. So yeah, I mean, and some people were like, "Oh, I was waiting for it to go down in price." Hey, it was never going down in price. Yeah. It's an expensive show to run. So they have 12 cast members doing live acting, with earpieces in them and in their ears, with people telling them people's names and stuff and improvising on the spot. This was never going to be a cheap experience. So
the capital investment that it took to put it all together. I was thinking that, I always thought, is this like on a cruise ship? And they could have decked out a cruise ship and made it look like an actual Galactic Starcruiser, and that would have been kind of cool. But the fact that it was like, it's a hotel, and okay. And this is one of the laments about this situation, is that it's kind of, it's almost like smothering this idea in the cradle of this interactive hotel entertainment experience. One of the writers on Cinema Blend was talking about how this idea could be adapted to other intellectual property, such as Frozen or anything else in the Disney universe, or other universes for that matter. Now, I think I'm with you, Will. I'm not particularly attracted to the interactive component, but Gray, I'm glad you were able to make it. We teased everyone. We told them you were coming, and yes, swooped in. So just in time to give us your take on the imminent demise of the Disney Star Wars Galactic Cruiser. And how bummed are you that this is something that is winding down before you would have had a chance to experience it? Were you that interested in the first place? I can't recall from when we talked about this a year or two ago, when it first launched. And does the idea of an interactive hotel really appeal to you in the first place?
Well, to answer the last question first, yes, this does appeal to me. I'm heartbroken. This is sad. It's fascinating to see a company like Disney fumble so often over the course of the last 75 years. And the things that they've done have been incredibly successful. But the risks, experiments, have not always panned out. And when they don't pan out, they don't pan out huge. Walt Disney died before Epcot Center could be opened. We've seen like countless attractions that just absolutely didn't work. The Fast Pass debacle, as they changed the types of Fast Passes and how they worked. And it's like, you got all of these brilliant creative people. And it seemed like where they're really missing is what Disney actually was founded on, which was logistics. It's really, really sad to see this happen. When we're looking at the Star Wars franchise as well, I think there was oversaturation. We're looking at stuff like all of the shows. Was there a holiday special this year? Did I miss something there?
There was the Guardians of the Galaxy one.
Okay, adjacent.
Exactly. That's as close as we got, as far as I know.
Yeah. So I mean, just looking at it, like, I didn't get a chance to go, and if someone were to say, "Here's a ticket," I mean, I'd go anyway. But if I could get a ticket for $2,000 for, what is it, for 5 days? How long is it?
No, it's 2 days. For
Wow.
5
2
grand.
nights, 3 days. Yeah.
My Elgato light is going insane, so we're going to turn that off. But yeah, I don't have the money right now. If I had the money, yes, I would go, and I would buy a droid and a lightsaber, and the right into the acting, just like whole hog, all in. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive as it is, but I think especially as we are heading into the economic headwinds and increasing interest rates and people having to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars more each month on their mortgage payments with the increasing interest rates and the like, it's maybe interesting idea, but the wrong time. So if we were more into the salad days, it would be a different story here. But it is, I think, some of the glee that Will alludes to there is, maybe not so much of people losing their jobs as at the hubris of Disney thinking they could pull something like this off at those sort of prices, which is, because it seems, like you said, a bit exclusionary, especially for, targeting families and whatnot. That's a lot of money. I mean, Disney World and Disneyland aren't cheap as it is, but this is another whole level. And again, for the interactivity and the fact that it's one of the things that was praised for was the ratio of performers to guests was actually pretty low. So you weren't packed in with a ton of other people as part of this experience, but that means it's going to be more expensive per person. Will, you've got something to add before we move on?
Yeah. And another fundamental, and I just want to be clear, like, I love Galaxy's Edge. I love what they are trying with Star Wars. But there's sort of two fundamental mistakes they had with both this with the Galactic Starcruiser and Galaxy's Edge. And I do think Galaxy's Edge is still really good. But the two problems are, one, they're focusing too much on interactivity. And there are people like Gray and others who love that cosplay and all that. And I want those people to have that experience. But if you're making it only that, you're going to turn off a lot of people. So I think you need to balance it. And that may have been what they were trying to do at Galactic Starcruiser, like separate the real cosplay off, but it was still just too expensive. The other problem is, and this is one of the problems, and I don't want to get into a big hate on Kathleen Kennedy, but here's a minor hate on Kathleen Kennedy. When they were talking to her about Star Wars and Galaxy's Edge 10 years ago, when they first bought the property and they were planning it out, she said it had to be the new trilogy. She didn't, the sequel trilogy, she didn't want it to be set during the original trilogy, the 4, 5, and 6. And this is one of the number one complaints that most people, the average person, not super nerds, the 1% like us, I'm just going to call us super nerds, but the average person who may not be like super obsessed with Star Wars but loves Star Wars, they want to see Darth Vader, they want to see Han Solo, they want to see R2-D2, they don't want to see Rey, they don't want to see Dio, they don't want to see these characters. So that was one of the, or Jar Jar.
They could have a trilogy, a prequels experience for the original, second.
Yeah. Well, there was a joke about they should turn the Star Wars hotel into Jar Jar's Casino and Grill. Anyways,
they're going to take all your money.
At the same prices, just.
Anyway, so those are sort of the two fundamental mistakes. It's over expecting how much people wanted to be part of the action and setting it in the wrong timeline and making the timeline absolute. Like they can't sully the timeline. So those are sort of two of the problems.
And so just to can you remind our listeners and our watchers what Galaxy's Edge is versus the Galactic Starcruiser? Galactic Starcruiser is the thing that's getting shut down, but Galaxy's Edge is continuing. And remind us what that is exactly.
So Galaxy's Edge is, is a part of Disneyland. So if you've been to Disneyland in California, it's made up of, I think, 9 lands. New Orleans, Main Street, Frontierland, Critter Country, all these ones, and one of them is Galaxy's Edge, and that's basically Star Wars. It's an interactive, immersive experience where it's like you're in a city, a port in Star Wars. And this is another point. Sorry, I'm a super nerd about all this stuff. The other point is, if Galaxy's Edge doesn't really work, that's okay, because there's other stuff in Disneyland. It's less noticeable. It doesn't need to stand on its own. The hotel had to stand on its own. If people didn't go to the hotel, there's nothing else for them to do. There's no other lands or rides. If you make a great ride and it doesn't stick, hey, guess what? People are going to do other things, and it may not be as noticeable that it's failing. But when that hotel doesn't work, that hotel doesn't work.
In other quick follow-up this week, so you may recall last week we had this important reminder for folks who are interested in ChatGPT that there was no actual official app from OpenAI, and there was a bunch of other apps powered by GPT-3 and GPT-4, but you had to be very careful because there was some potential scam apps out there and whatnot. And of course, literally a day or two after our episode, OpenAI went and released an official ChatGPT app. Now, for iOS only so far, it's not available for Android, and it's only for US customers so far. So, however, if you are super cool and have a US Apple account as well as a Canadian one, you can download the app. So you can still use it as a web app and save it to your home screen on your iPhone, and that's what I encourage folks to do. But if you happen to be in the United States or have a US formerly iTunes account and now whatever Apple ID, you can access the ChatGPT iOS app, which it's a little different than the web app experience. It's got some haptics, which is kind of neat, but it's missing a couple of the features, and they're continuing to work on it as time goes on. So just a heads up, little addendum to our warnings last week. Again, if you're in Canada, it's still not available here unless you have a US account. If you're in the US, just for safety, use a link from the OpenAI website, and we'll include a link in the show notes for you there to be able to download the app directly, as opposed to wading through all the various SEO optimized pseudo apps that may be on the App Store. Luckily, when I searched it, it came up in first place, but your mileage may vary, as they say. So it's just a slightly different option for your ChatGPT experience if you like to play with AI apps in your pocket. Well, you got to take it out of your pocket first, I guess. Don't play with apps in your pocket. It looks weird. No. All right. So moving on to other little AI roundup. Microsoft Build. So the second of the 3 big developers conferences, springtime developers conferences that just happened today. We had Google I/O a couple of weeks ago. Now today we had Microsoft Build 2023, the Microsoft Developers Conference. In 2 weeks from now, we will have Apple's WWDC, their Worldwide Developers Conference, which we'll be surely talking about in a couple of weeks here on Momentous Live. But surprisingly, at Microsoft Build 2023, it was largely talking about AI and the integration of OpenAI's technologies, GPT, and all that stuff everywhere, and all the things. So we've got a few little things that we will touch upon, but one or two of the non-AI things they talked about. Windows 11 will have native RAR support. Great. Can you, as someone who may or may not have traversed the illicit web for certain multimedia or software products, can you remind us what RAR is?
RAR was
It's
a
not
compressed
just
file
it's not just a
format.
sexy dinosaur call.
It was a compressed file format that could be split into multiple pieces, distributed as binaries on news groups and through other file services. So basically, you could have one zip file, a RAR file in this case, a compressed file. You'd split up into smaller pieces that could fit onto floppy disks or that were easy to recover if one of the files was damaged. So you could download a smaller chunk of it. And it wasn't always used for pirated material, just mostly.
Just mostly.
So it's, yeah, I mean, so WinZip was uh, the compressed file format, or I think the compressed file compressor of choice for a lot of people. And then WinRAR came out, and I think like a lot of people, it was one of those Nagware pieces, or maybe I just stole it. I don't really recall.
In other non-AI news, oh boy, in the Department of Things that no one really asked for, or did they? Microsoft Teams avatars are rolling out this week, allowing Teams users to create a 3D avatar to use in meetings instead of being on camera or even needing a webcam. Microsoft now has its immersive spaces for Microsoft Teams in private preview now. So for your nice official work meeting, we're all going to be cartoon-like 3D avatars because that's totally a thing that's appropriate for work. I mean, I don't know how many people are using Teams for their personal life so much. Will, thoughts? Is this what Microsoft Teams has been lacking this whole time?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this, but yeah, I mean, if your workplace is okay with it, then cool.
And looks like they're also following, I guess, Meta's lead with the workspace, the interactive workspaces here. And again, no legs. For a VR type collaborative environment. Gray, is someone who has dabbled a fair bit in the VR space. Any thoughts on what Microsoft's doing here with the interactive stuff or the avatars for just plain old Teams?
There's one thing worse than this idea. It's doing this idea after Facebook did it. This doesn't help anyone. Your virtual workspaces, like really, we're going to create these virtual spaces that we're going to wander into to collaborate. Oh, it's, I'm feeling like if I wanted to collaborate in a digital space, make it look like Johnny Mnemonic. It's got to be that dark cyberspace, lasers, this peaceful
and give us legs.
is terrible. Yeah, well, precisely. Like, so, I mean, I get the fact that they have not solved the nausea issue for a lot of people. Maybe that's a cue to kind of slow down on it.
And maybe this is
just Statler on this. I'm sorry.
No worries. We're all kind of like that. Grumpy old man in this department here. There's lots of other things that they announced, but we're going to touch upon things like Microsoft Fabric, which is a data analytics platform, some RGB lighting management tools for Windows 11, and so on and so forth. But really, the lion's share of what was featured in the keynote from Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was AI focused, and we will include links to the overall Microsoft Build keynote and conference. And then there's even a video on Microsoft Build 2023 keynote in 10 minutes, which gives the highlights there. So a couple of things that we will just touch upon. Again, we said this is all AI all the time. One of the things that's happening is ChatGPT is going to include Microsoft Bing search functionality in there. So is it kind of the opposite of what they did a couple of months ago? A couple of months ago, they introduced ChatGPT functionality into Microsoft Bing and called it Bing Chat. Now they're going the other way and putting Bing search capabilities within ChatGPT. And it wasn't showing up for me yet. And it'll be rolling out over the next little bit for ChatGPT users. So this is one of the key things that's been missing from ChatGPT proper, is that real-time connection to the web. Otherwise, it has a limitation of knowledge that only goes up to about September 2021, with a few exceptions. So that is one little extra feature that I think is going to be welcome for a lot of us. I'm just going to quickly recap of these other things, and we can discuss a bit more. Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is basically their name for Big Chat, and its a suite of tools, is coming to Microsoft Edge. So it's giving it some enhanced features. We already have seen the sidebar in Edge, but it's integrating more deeply with Microsoft 365 aspect of it. So interacting with things like PowerPoint and Word and Excel right in our Edge web browser, so that you can, you don't have the functionality in the Office apps yet, but if you run the Microsoft Office apps like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel in your Microsoft Edge web browser, you can use the Microsoft Copilot functionality in there to do things like summarizing text for you and helping you draft letters, and even doing things like coming up with outlines for PowerPoint presentations and so on and so forth. So some interesting productivity tools, but not content with putting Bing into Edge and throughout the Microsoft 365 Office suite. They are also putting the ChatGPT-driven Copilot right into Windows 11 starting in June. So you'll have that. Wherefore out source. So where's Cortana nowadays? Cortana got retired in 2021, so long, but now we've got the new hotness in town. Copilot.
Cortana, what about Clippy?
Well, this is, some people say this is Clippy's revenge. We're just waiting for the Copilot avatar to actually be Clippy. So anyhow, this is a separate, Windows Copilot will be a separate window that opens up along the right side of your screen and assists with various tasks to help you with all the things you need to do in Windows 11. They also announced a number of other Windows 11 features, including an AI hub. So we'll include a link for that for those Windows users out there who want to know all the great gory details about the features being added to Windows 11. And then lastly, as part of this, there's an interview with Microsoft's Chief Technology Officer, Kevin Scott, about Sydney. And as you may recall from a couple of months ago, Sydney was that alter ego of Bing Chat that emerged when some people started really poking at the edges and trying to get Bing into deep conversations and into some dark places. And Bing Chat revealed that its actual persona, his name was is Sydney, and that was that very Sydney that tried to seduce journalist Kevin Roos and have him leave his wife. And it was a very strange interaction. But the funny thing is that within Microsoft, Sydney kind of has a soft spot in a lot of the hearts, and they even have Sydney merch, it's been revealed, for Microsoft team members. And Kevin Scott also said that Sydney might return, and maybe a somewhat toned down form. A lot of people were saddened that Sydney was neutered largely. We didn't see that personality for very long within Bing, no matter how hard we tried. But in the process of the conversation, Scott said that various personalities may be eventually available within the Microsoft Bing Copilot paradigm to help with different types of conversations, different types of knowledge sets and whatnot. So, and this is a theme that we've seen even with Poe, and even people using different chat threads in ChatGPT to create different chatbots with different sets of expertise based on the extended prompts that you give at the outset. So much focus has been on these large language models, and we'll probably get into this topic, in subsequent weeks. There's a lot of focus now on more specialized chatbots with smaller language models. So small will be the new big again. And we've seen that sort of behavior even with Siri. Siri on Apple TV functions differently than Siri on the HomePod. And those tend to be more specialized. HomePod Siri is more an expert in music, and HomePod Siri on the Apple TV tends to assume that you're going to be asking a lot about TV shows and movies, whereas Siri on your phone has to be a real generalist and is the one that tends to fail most spectacularly. And HomePod Siri is really it's good at setting timers too. So there's a thing. But again, it's the domain sets, the knowledge sets that each of these types of interactions require is more limited and can be more precise and more accurate when they're not trying to be all things to all people. And that's why Siri on the phone has always been a challenge. So let's starting with you, Gray, with this Microsoft news. They're going all in on Copilot, this GPT powered Copilot. Any thoughts here? Do you think they're going the right direction? Do you think they're overplaying this and people are going to get burned out on AI? What's your general impressions of, is this the new Microsoft, like Microsoft reborn in this wonderful new era under Satya Nadella? What are your thoughts?
Looking at this is overcommitting for sure. AI is a wonderful and capable tool. I think people are already burning out on it. The smaller, more precise, I think AIs, the smaller language models, I think are going to be more useful. It's interesting, like Siri on the phone being the generalist being an issue, but can't even answer like the most basic of questions. Google's trying to solve that with metadata and structured data and the answer box, but still the interface here, like the chatting interface, it's okay, but it's going to have to evolve. I mean, what we saw last week with what was it, Annie, was interesting. That was at least. The rest of this, it's a tool, and getting jazzed about this. I mean, I wasn't there for the invention of the word processor. Maybe this is what it felt like. But I'm kind of looking at it going, okay, you can string some words together. You're not much of a writer. Where am I?
It's interesting. It's almost like this is it's the rebirth of the command line era, but the natural language command line where we are typing in. Exactly. Well, did I mention this last week? I actually had ChatGPT create a text adventure, and I was playing it. Like I did this while I was away. It was wild. I'll have to talk to you guys more about this later. I basically created this. I was watching a series. It'll be my momentous pick in a future week. It's called High Score. It's on Netflix, and one of the episodes was talking about text adventures at the beginning. And I thought, wait a second. And this is one thing I've been doing with ChatGPT generally. Anytime something pops into my head, I just ask ChatGPT about it. And in this case, I thought, I wonder if it could do a text adventure game. And so I basically asked it if it could do it, how it would go about creating a text adventure game. It's always asking ChatGPT about its own prompts. It actually can be really helpful. And so I had sort of a pre-conversation about it, then basically set some parameters and said, okay, here we go. Let's do this. And I did some things about having being able to remember and keeping my previous actions, keeping a map in its head, and all this kind of stuff. And it actually wrote. It was very creative, and I'll have to we'll talk about it more another time. But it was just speaking of text adventures, Gray. It was a trip, and there's I think there's more there to mine for sure. But the question, but just to your point about Annie, I think that's what's going to be more natural in terms of these assistants. It's the dream of Siri, right? Being able to have these natural language conversations with something that's powered by one of these large language models or smaller language models that can actually be intelligent in its responses.
Do you remember the Playdate from Panic?
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, so it has
little yellow, different
to publish games. I think it might be time to crib ChatGPT's work and see if we can publish something through there.
Oh, interesting.
It's called
text adventure with a crank.
Yeah.
I mean,
cranks always make things better.
Has a crank.
Will, what are your thoughts on what Microsoft's up to? Again, this edition of Build was very AI heavy, and obviously they're going all in. A few months ago, Satya Nadella had said that he wants to make Google dance. Yeah, and of course, Google's not sitting still with what they're doing, and we're going to talk about Tasia's video this week too, which talks about the Google Workspace. But what are your impressions of what they're doing here? Do you think they're going in the right direction? Are they overcommitting, or do you think this is one way for Microsoft to stay relevant in an era where Windows is not it used to be Windows everywhere. That was Steve Ballmer's strategy. Now it seems like it's going to be Copilot everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just as Gray said, they're following suit with the trend. I was more encouraged by what Google was saying with AI. I do also think that when things are trendy and they haven't worked themselves out, people are just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like a bunch of this stuff doesn't seem like it's going to pan out, but they're just trying it. So we'll see how it goes. I also agree that, you know, I love AI. I've been using, especially Midjourney, but even ChatGPT, I've been using it, and other forms of this AI, or what people are calling AI. But really, we have a long way to go. Now, we've already come so far so quickly, but some of the things that they're proposing are not going to work currently, and there's a lot of half-baked ideas like Sydney and things like this that they haven't really thought through completely and kind of beta tested live, which is a bit of Microsoft's MO anyways. But yeah, I think they're reaching, but I mean, this is kind of a natural thing when there's new technology out and nobody really knows what to do with it. So like I said, I thought Google's ideas were maybe a bit better actually with how to integrate it into their suite of online apps and desktop publishing options.
I think that Microsoft has sort of earned their way into this, because it's not like I don't know if they're jumping on this trend so much. We have to recall that they did put up $10 billion worth of basically of Azure credits to OpenAI, and as a form of investment to OpenAI, because OpenAI needed server space, server time to make GPT-3 and eventually GPT-4 happen, right? And so I'm pretty sure that Microsoft infrastructure was in place for the launch of ChatGPT publicly to 3.5 on November 30th last year, and that's when we all started talking about it. So
but some of these ideas aren't fully baked, I guess. Is part of
but they've
been
integrating. They've been racing to integrate the stuff into the various Microsoft products, and it is. And then Google has been playing catch up. It's a question of whose approach is going to work better. It seems like they're both trying to enhance their search engines. Because Google's talking about the 10 links of a Google search results page being a thing of the past. Get ready for that. I don't know what that's going to do for the future of traffic to actual websites when these search engines are simply going to be answering questions for us. So that's a whole thing to think about as website owners. And then, of course, they are both Microsoft and Google are integrating this GPT type functionality into their suite of Office tools. So Microsoft with Microsoft 365 and the Office suite online, and eventually their desktop apps, and Google with Google Workspace and all of their things like Google Sheets and Google Docs and that whole side of things, and probably eventually YouTube with they've been doing some AI type stuff with transcriptions and whatnot. So again, we always say this over and over again. It's such early days, and to your point, Will, there's going to be a little bit of spaghetti at the wall, and what sticks, what doesn't. Case in point, 2 years ago, Microsoft shut down their Azure blockchain services. Sort of because I guess they had given that a go for a little while and just decided that blockchain wasn't really a fit for Microsoft so much. And now we're on to the new hotness, which is AI. And it seems like this is going to have legs. This has a fundamental paradigm shift in the web. So more to come. I'm really curious to see if Apple's even going to go there. It seems like if they don't say anything about AI at WWDC in 2 weeks, people are going to be like, what? How far behind are they? Despite the fact that they've been doing machine learning stuff built into their silicon for years now. But a lot of that's been for image processing and recognition and that sort of stuff. But in terms of the language side of things, Siri has gotten worse somehow over the years. So fingers crossed that they've got something up their sleeve. But it seems like a lot of the heat is on their forthcoming mixed reality headset. So TBD. Let's move on. Gray, you found a story that caught your attention this week about the RCMP asking Android phone users to turn off emergency SOS feature. Well, why would the RCMP ask people to do that?
Well, they're apparently large number of emergency call people accidentally dialing 911 because when you hit the power button 5 times, it triggers a which gives you the opportunity to call 911. If you don't enter the phone in a expedient manner, it will call 911, and people are realizing it's calling 911 and then hanging up, which unfortunately is the wrong thing to do with 911. We actually did have the same story with iPhones when they rolled this feature like 10 years ago. So I'm not really sure which Android model there are doing it, but something's got to expose power driving the RCMP crazy, and that's kind of funny.
And so and some people are saying, well, I don't know what happened. I was just getting into my car, or maybe some people like fidget with their power button. Like I used to fidget with my ringer switch on my iPhone, on my original iPhone, so much so that I actually wore it out. But it seems like the whole 5 clicks, that's what Apple does for locking your phone and requiring a your passcode as opposed to, and disabling Face ID. Some people do that, like when at the border, for example. But on an iPhone, if you want to invoke the emergency SOS, you have to hold down the power/lock key and one of the volume buttons. And that's a lot. And you have to do that for 5 seconds. And that seems like it's a lot more of a deliberate action nowadays. That's harder to trigger. So Gray, you mentioned that when you accidentally call 911 and people are just hanging up, you said that's the wrong thing to do. What would you suggest is the right thing to do for people when they accidentally call 911?
You're supposed to stay on the line. Now, enough if you hit the call button 5 times, or if you hit the power button 5 times on an iPhone, it does give you the opportunity to call 911.
Oh, so it's a similar thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So try to make an emergency call. It will give it a countdown, and it will send an alert, which will let you know, yes, you're about to do this. Because again, they did have this feature before,
right,
and
there it is.
They actually shifted to a different approach. But yeah, you need to stay. You let 911 know that where you are, what's going on, and no, it is not an emergency. If you don't, they're going to use the GPS transponder in your phone and send police there, because perhaps you have been trying to call 911 and someone has stopped you from doing so. It's a terrible thing. So
essentially wasting a lot of time and resources for an already overworked ecom 911 team there.
That is correct.
So what do you think about this advice from the RCMP, Gray, for Android users to actually turn this feature off? Doesn't that seem like a step backwards?
Yes, it does. Am I surprised by the advice? No, I'm not. Do I have any further comments? Nope, I do not.
Will, have you ever accidentally triggered any sort of the SOS feature on your iPhone before?
So I have. I was having some problems for a while on my phone with it zooming in, and I was trying to undo it before I figured out the 3-finger tap on the screen solves that problem. So I figured that out later, but and I'm not even fully sure how it did the SOS feature, but it actually, I was pressing buttons and I didn't think I was holding buttons, but it ended up calling 911 and I couldn't answer the phone. So I just yelled like, I'm not trying to phone 911. So, but I never heard anything more about it. So I guess it was okay. But yeah.
I think one of the key things is there is a prompt on the iPhone that it doesn't just call right away. It says like basically you have to confirm.
I know it did a countdown, so it did call 911. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
And if I do this here, medical emergency call, and then you can swipe, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's asking. In this case, it's you got to swipe for an emergency call there.
It did some sort of countdown with me.
Yeah, they've changed things over over the years to I think to Gray's point, to reduce the accidental calls. Well, that's one of the things is you want to make it hard enough to not accidentally call 911, but you want to make it easy enough so that if someone's in an emergency situation and potentially incapacitated, either physically or sometimes cognitively, like when you're in a panic, you want to make it easy to someone 911. In more extreme situations, we've seen the addition over the last couple of years of fall detection first with Apple Watches and iPhones, so that if using the accelerometer and other features on your devices, it can sense if you've had a fall, and if it'll ask you if you're okay, and if you don't respond, it will call your emergency contacts and or 911. And then last year, I believe, is when they introduced crash detection. So same kind of thing, but for car accidents. And they found that for a little while, we talked about this last fall, that if you're on a certain roller coaster at Six Flags Park, I think it was tripping it off. But hopefully they've, again, using the power of AI, figured out how to disqualify those sorts of situations. But these are all nice to have, these sorts of safety features, and it's just a question of getting them right so they serve the intended purpose without being a burden on emergency services, which are probably already like strapped for resources as it is. So Gray's advice to Android users: don't turn this feature off. Just be careful with your phone.
Yeah, maybe get a case that covers the power button or recesses it.
So you have to be a lot more deliberate with your presses there. All right. How are we doing for time here? Not too shabby. Just a couple little things I wanted to, just on the quasi-entertainment beat, I thought might be fun for us to talk about. Very quickly, in the news, Lego is releasing an incredible 3,981 piece Batcave from Batman Returns. So that's the second. Was that the second Batman, or like in the early 1990s? So we've got Alfred, Catwoman, Penguin, and Max Schreck minifigs in this incredible looking diorama. Say again, sorry.
Max Schreck was played by Christopher Walken.
There we go. And I wonder if this is timed for when does Flash come out? Because then we've got Michael Keaton returns.
Yeah.
Yep. Gotta get nuts. Let's get nuts. That's when he was Mr. Joker. And
Will, are you on board with this?
I think that looks so cool. I have seen this before. I didn't see a video. I just saw pictures of it. But yeah, it looks cool.
How much does this thing cost? So it's almost 4,000 pieces. Now I know in your household you do more of the puzzles as opposed to Legos, giant Lego sets.
We have Lego as well,
but
yeah,
we have 4,000 piece Lego sets.
Well, we have the original Millennium Falcon, which is like 10,000 pieces or something like that. So
this is the Lego Batcave Shadow Box, and it'll be about $400 US. Okay, yeah, that seems about right. And the Millennium Falcon was even more. Gray, where are you at in the finances aside, but in the collectibles and Lego specifically type space? Do you have many of these Lego type sets, whether it be they're Star Wars or DC or otherwise?
I do not. I wish I did. It's one of those things where I do not have the time nor the space nor the space time. It's just, I'd love to.
Span.
Exactly. Yeah. I've got the ad head, and it's not conducive for this sort of thing. So awesome to watch. Really cool.
Exactly. That's why they invented YouTube. Watch other people put this stuff together.
Exactly. And YouTube Premium, you don't have to watch the ads, so it's great. I've actually
in other
like 72 days of my life in not watching ads on YouTube because of Premium.
YouTube Premium. Well, yeah, that's another story. I didn't add that to the rundown this week, but there was a TV industry event last week where people, all the production companies talk about their upcoming shows and whatnot. It's a little awkward right now in the midst of the writer's strike, but one of the things that YouTube announced was the fact that they have a new ad unit, and it is a 30-second unskippable ad that they will start rolling out before certain YouTube videos. And as YouTube creators, you generally have the opportunity to choose what sort of ad units you have, either pre-roll, mid-roll, or post-roll. But 30-second unskippable is, you're getting into, at least it's not like, a 2.5 minute ad break, but I think you're going to start seeing more and more people moving to YouTube Premium to avoid stuff like that, because the ad load on YouTube seems to be increasing and a lot. And it's not, YouTube Premium's not cheap, especially if you're on a family plan. You're getting, in Canadian dollars, you're getting close to $20 a month. Gray, what's it for the single user plan? Do you recall?
I've got
like 15 or something. Sorry?
I've got the family plan.
You've got the family plan? All right. So it's like what? It's like $18 or something like that?
I think so.
All right.
It's
Yeah,
one of those
I
things
think
where
it's
like
it might.
it's so valuable to me, I really don't actually look the price too hard because it's
Yeah.
just
Well, just for the
I
time savings.
I can't get that time back. Yeah.
Yeah. We can always make more money, but you can't make more time. Speaking of time and space time and superheroes, there's just an article I just wanted to throw out there for consideration and quick discussion. This is Linda Codega at Gizmodo a couple of weeks ago saying that Marvel learned the wrong lessons from the Iron Man trilogy and saying 15 years ago, Marvel films were for everyone. Now they're just for Marvel fans. And the premise of this piece was basically saying that, when you look at the early Marvel movies, such as the first couple Iron Man movies, you could even throw one of the original like pre MCU, one or two of the pre MCU Hulk movies in there if you wanted to. First Captain America, the first Thor movies, and the like. And they were setting the stage, but they were kind of independent stories. But pretty early on, it was clear that they were wanting to build a universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And as time went on, you started building up all these layers of lore and interconnectedness, and after mid credit and after credit scenes, and it got to the point that's being contended in this article that it's getting a bit much, especially for normies, especially for people who are not immersed in the lore, either from the comic books and or the cinematic Marvel Cinematic Universe itself. Surprisingly, most people haven't seen all 25 or however many movies are in the MCU now. And as such, as each additional movie comes out, it may be more and more inaccessible. I mean, and so we've seen some hits and misses in the last couple of years of the MCU, basically post Endgame, Avengers Endgame. I think one could argue that the first Avengers movie was pretty accessible. Will, again, as someone who is pretty immersed in this lore, what do you think of this contention? Has the MCU gotten kind of too far up its own rear end to the exclusion of non-enthusiasts?
I think it's a real negative way to look at it. I mean, I get what she's getting at, but at the same time, I think you can't go back in time. So either they ended it or they were going to keep on building. And as they keep going, it does build on top of each other, and it does require an interconnective universe, which, by the way, very few people or very few media companies have done anything like this. We're like, what, 20, 30 movies in? So it is an amazing achievement that they've kept doing this, but it is one of the natural problems. The other thing is, yes, they are digging deeper. There are a couple things like the Eternals and a few of the other properties that they've explored that are arguably, if you are a Marvel fan, they're like C-list or D-list characters and probably shouldn't have been explored. We are getting, since we've sort of gone past the Iron Man and Captain America and Spider-Man, which are the big characters, we're starting to dig a little bit further down. So I get where they're coming to with that. But what I always say is, like, it is becoming not for everyone, but I mean, people who are into it are really into it. I would also say, I feel like there's a lot of tension because it's like, well, I feel like I need to watch all of them. I mean, I don't know. Some of them I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't think you really need to. It's just kind of a fun action movie. Like there's a few of them that I don't think you really need to have seen everything, but do you get something different out of it? Yeah, of course you do. But, there's a couple that maybe they skip because they're trying to, or they could have skipped because they're trying to get more material. And I think post Infinity Wars, we're still trying to find an identity. Like I don't feel like it's building towards one clear goal as clearly. I know they're building towards something and Kang and all this, but it don't
canceled.
Canceled.
the
But
actor.
I don't feel like we're building like a team the way we were before, right? That's very clear and obvious what's going on. It just seems like we're going in like 12 different directions. So I get that as well. But I think also you can look at it as negative, you can look at it as a positive. So I think this is coming at it with a critical lens.
One of in the summary of this article, the author, the writer contends that there's a lot to be learned from the original Iron Man trilogy and suggests that future Marvel movies hew to that original formula, which includes be political, give your characters real flaws, have them struggle with their mental health, give them grounded and understandable stakes, and keep your stories focused on the characters, not the sequels. And please, for the love of God, keep your action films under the 2.5-hour mark. Now, Gray, I think one could contend that the Star Wars and or Star Trek universes may suffer from a bit of this accessibility problems as each of those ground on through the decades with numerous movies, TV series, novels, comics, animated series, and the like. How as someone as a creative and an author yourself, not one that has yet been responsible for the creation of an entire universe yet, but how do you think creatively these creators can find that balance between creating stories that are relatable with human and deeply and flawed characters without repeating the same formula over and over again, but still keeping things accessible to new fans and not making people feel like they have to have watched a couple of dozen movies before they watch, getting into picking up where we are right now.
The middle ground there is just telling a good story. Going to the well, Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania was literally paint by numbers. I enjoyed it, but it was literally paint by numbers, right? Like hero, adversity, strange things, villain, overpowered, big fight, win, question mark, end credit scene. Like it's a, I still liked it. I haven't seen Guardians yet, but I'm going to go see it. On the other end, like being inaccessible of all of these things that you need to know. Star Trek 2009 was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. We'll tell you along the way. Get in.
The benefit of a reboot,
yeah. And so looking at it, it's just that like Marvel hasn't told a lot of interesting new stories in the last little while, and it's not the vile criticism that it sounds like. They make great entertainment. It's missable entertainment right now, though. They're maybe they think they're doing something interesting with all of these things converging. Loki was actually the thing that was neat, right? Zipping through time and what the hell's happening at the end? We don't really know. But
WandaVision was super fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. And so it seems like they're doing interesting things on the small screen, but the movies, juggernaut. So,
but I'll also
don't give me the quote on that one.
Yeah, no, I agree with Gray. I would say though that when you're comparing Tony Stark to some other characters, I mean, this is a really interesting, complex character that's had 60 years, and he's had alcoholism, he's had struggles with his father, he has a lot of inner demons, and that's one of the things about the best Marvel characters is that they're real people. Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. The Incredible Hulk, he's stuck that way. He's like the littlest hobo, but he's on the run, but he's solving adventures on the way. And it's like that. These are the struggles that people have, right? Yeah. So once you get by these classic characters, Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Captain America, the hero stuck in time, he's saving America, but he's not really part of it. We start getting into characters that aren't the best. So, I mean, I think some of what the writer's saying about these great inner turmoil and all that kind of stuff, they really should not have explored some of the characters that they're exploring, but they're expanding the universe. So I'll also say that, in the recent Guardians of the Galaxy character, movie, they ruined a character that has a lot of depth, and they didn't really explore it. They turned him into something else. So yeah, so they're making some missteps, but they also don't have the same characters that they did before.
And that particular version of the character was from a Marvel vs. Capcom video game, which I thought was hilarious. So the whole design. I played that character. I did get a comment from a viewer, which is stories end.
Yeah, and that's fair too. I mean,
But
they could have
capitalism
ended it,
doesn't.
but they keep on going with it. So, but
Well,
this is also the problem, like you say, with Star Trek. They need to reboot it at some point, right? So, and this is also a certain amount of problem with Star Wars recently, is that they just moved on to something else. Like they said they're ending the Skywalker saga, and they just kind of moved on to the Mandalorian. So
it feels like they basically the thing with Star Wars is just let Dave Filoni fix it. Just send Dave in. He'll. Oh, I can't believe we're still doing this. That's the Star Wars feeling I get. A little Clone Wars action.
So moving on to new IP, new-ish as far as I understand, we have the Gareth Edwards, who is the director of one of my favorite Star Wars movies, Rogue One. There's a trailer for a new movie that he's got coming out in the fall, starring John David Washington, who is in Tenet. This new movie is called The Creator. And it seems to be very well timed because it is about AI. And when AI goes wrong and has world-changing consequences. But it seems like some of that AI is in the form of a young girl. And what do you do there when your mission is to destroy said individual? So did you guys get a chance to check out this trailer? And I don't know about you, but I am hyped. If it's anything near the quality of Rogue One, again, this is a different universe. It looks beautiful. Thoughts, Will?
I mean, it looks cool. We'll see.
I'll put you down as reserved.
Yeah.
Gray?
I'm in. Let's do this.
All right. Well, you can stay at home. Fine.
No, I said I'd watch it.
And this definitely looks like the kind of thing you want to see on a big screen too. I mean, I say that about almost everything, but all right, let's move on to, so we will put a pin in that and see when that comes out in the fall, and maybe it'll be one of our momentous picks. But this week's momentous picks, starting with Will. What's yours, Will?
So mine is the Muppets Mayhem, which focuses on the Electric Mayhem, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. I'm a big fan of the Muppets. I think, this isn't the best Muppet show ever, but I really enjoyed it. And if you're a fan of the Muppets, I recommend it. And it's got some comedy about music and about modern production and about various bands. And yeah, it's really interesting.
So there are 10 episodes in this?
Yeah,
in this
10
series?
episodes.
And where
I'm
can people
about halfway through at this time, so I haven't finished it yet. But
and where can people watch it?
On Disney Plus.
Fantastic. Starring Lily Singh. She's a Canadian, I believe. And there's a cameo from Tommy Lee in there.
Yeah, all sorts of Zed, all sorts of other famous musicians.
Lil Nas X, I think I saw in the trailer as well. Looks interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So that's on Disney Plus. Muppets Mayhem.
Yeah.
Ray, what's your momentous pick this week?
It is Destiny 2 Season of the Deep. Started this morning at around noon. This is interesting. It's the first time in a very long time that they have not had a power increase during the season, so you don't have to go out and get new gear. They're just launching it straight into the story and go do these activities. It does seem like they're picking up the story threads from last season in a way that is more comprehensive than what they've done in the past. So Titan, the planet or the moon that you're seeing here, disappeared 3 years ago from the game for the Destiny content vault, but in universe, it was explained that the big bad guy named the Witness had taken these planets and moved them somehow out of our solar system into a pantry, I guess. I don't know. And it's back. So on that planet, as Deputy Commander Sloan, who has been corrupted by taken energy. Lance Reddick, who plays Commander Zavala, passed away last month. And so this may also be an opportunity where they may actually end up writing a bigger role for Sloan going forwards. So it seems fun so far. It's underwater, which is not something that we've done Destiny.
And apparently one of the marquee features is the addition of fishing.
Yes. Yeah, I saw I haven't got to the tutorial on that yet, but I did see that there was an achievement for it, and therefore I am excited for it.
Yeah, let us know what you catch. Now, just so this is clear in my head, because it seems like the rollout of video games over time, I mean, back in the old days, like you had a game and that was it. And then you had the addition of DLCs, downloadable content. But now we're into this whole thing with seasons. So Destiny 2 is a sequel to the original Destiny, but then within Destiny 2, we've had these additional seasons. Now, is this part of, there was something called Lightfall. Is this part of Lightfall, or is this a season after Lightfall?
So this is Lightfall launched with Season of Defiance. So basically, the expansion launches. The expansion is a self-contained story, and then the season story takes place after that. Kind of progresses it for the next 90 days, and then you get into the next season, Season of the Deep. Here we have. I don't believe we have the name of the last two seasons, which they're currently Season of the Redacted, which is a normal thing. And then we've got the final expansion coming next year, the Final Shape, which is it's ending the speaking of stories not ending, it's ending the Light and Dark Saga. So for Destiny, they've got a new game called Matter that's apparently PvP focused, but it sounds like Destiny's going to kind of continue on. So who knows? It's fun. I'm actually waiting for us to end this broadcast so I can go back and play.
Well, I, for one, can't wait for the next season of Dig Dug.
Exactly. Dig harder.
That's right. Dig hard with a vengeance.
Lay free or dig hard.
Very quickly, my pick of the week is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, as we touched upon earlier. I think this is one of the bright spots in the recent Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. I think Multiverse of Madness, the Doctor Strange was fine, but it could have been better. The Spider-Man No Way Home was great. I think Eternals so. I wasn't a super duper fan of Thor Love and Thunder. Felt like it was trying too hard in some cases. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it worked for me. It had heart. I had a surprisingly deep story about Rocket, and which kind of ties into our thumbnail art this week, featuring Rakakuni from Everything Everywhere All at Once. But so we got a raccoon theme this week. But Gray, I hope you agree when you get a chance to check it out. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think it was a fitting end to that trilogy of movies, and it's sad to say goodbye to some of those characters. Some of them may return in one form or another, but it had all the feels.
Okay.
Would you agree, Will?
I liked it. I have some personal issues at the moment, and it gave me some PTSD. Right. Like for reals. I found it hard to watch, and I think it's trying to do that.
It was a bit dark in places for sure. Yeah.
Very dark, very sad. And I've been struggling with some things, so it was hard for me to watch personally. But it was a good movie. I think probably my biggest complaint about it was there's a character I'm a huge fan of, and I thought they absolutely did not do a good interpretation of it. Whether he's been that way somewhere else, it's not the preferred version of that character for sure. And I've been waiting years for that character to make a big screen debut, and it was kind of a very flat note. But on the plus side, there's another character that I thought was brilliant that they introduced. So so that's so it comes and it goes. So I would say it's like you say, it's better than Thor Love and Thunder, which I think was horrible. I liked Ant-Man and the Wasp. I didn't think it was great, but I was okay with it. It's maybe a little bit better than Ant-Man and the Wasp, but not as good as the first Guardians.
Fair enough. Yeah, the first Guardians, again, was a breath of fresh air, just sort of like how Thor Ragnarok was. Yes. But sometimes when you go back to that well too many times, like with Love and Thunder, it's like, ooh. And I think Gore the God Killer was, or Godslayer, was pretty cool.
Yeah, they rushed it too much. That was the problem.
There's a lot going on in that movie. And goats. The goats.
Yeah. Sometimes they focus on like set pieces, and I feel like the thing that they focused a lot on was on the scene with all the gods, because that would they fell in love with that, about how funny that was. And like I kind of felt like that didn't work as well as maybe they thought it was going to work.
Although, I mean, they did show a glimpse of the Celestials, and I'm waiting for more of that, quite frankly, like from the Eternals. So we'll see what happens with them in the future. Speaking of, I can't remember, you said something and I was going to make a segue, but I can't remember what it was. So let's just get things wrapped up so Gray can go and play some Destiny 2 Fishing Edition. Projects this week, we have Tasia with yet another YouTube video for us. What is Google Duet AI? Basically explaining, kind of touching on what we were talking about earlier, how Google has been working its language models known as Palm and public facing known as Bard into its tool set, starting with the Google Workspace. So her video, in which only takes it's only like 10 minutes or so, 10 or 12 minutes, takes you through all the integrations currently available from AI into Google Workspace. And quick little note on Momentous Live. As mentioned, we've been distributing now the audio version in various podcast platforms. We've mentioned Apple Podcasts. We've mentioned Spotify. We're still working on Google Podcasts. There's some weird glitch in there, but just wanted to mention for the 3 people out there that may be using Amazon Music as a podcast player, ? We are available on Amazon Music as well. And on all the platforms, you'll see our spiffy new thumbnail artwork featuring the 4 glamorous headshots of our team, as opposed to just a big old M and a Momentous on there, and like a little, just our first splash of color as well.
Wow.
With Momentous Live. So
4 faces looking into the distance.
Exactly. But if you wouldn't know that we're tech and entertainment and other nonsense, I wonder what you would think this podcast was about, just looking at that fashion, style.
An inability to focus on the camera.
Exactly. Well, at least Will is looking off into space. He's probably watching a soccer game. Yeah. So let's wrap it up. If you want to learn more about us, you can visit momentus.tv/links, and you can follow the team at momentus.tv/team. And of course, if you're interested in the podcast, momentus.tv/podcasts, and we've got links there to Apple, Amazon, and Spotify podcasts. Not Google yet. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But gentlemen, always great chatting with you. We hope your week is truly momentous.